He was just a regular passenger, quietly settling into his seat for a routine flight. But minutes later, security was called, and he was escorted off the plane. Little did anyone know, this mistake would lead to one of the most shocking turnarounds in airline history. 7 minutes after being kicked off, he wasn't just a passenger anymore. He was the CEO of the airline. How did that happen? Stick around to find out. Before we start the story, comment below and let us know where in the world you're watching from today. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an incredible tale like this. A black man was sitting in his seat, waiting for the plane to take off. The flight was supposed to be a routine one from New York to Chicago. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary at first. He had checked in earlier, passed through security without any issues, and found his seat like any other passenger. But as he settled in, something felt off. The flight attendant, a young woman, glanced over at him a few times. She seemed uneasy, her eyes darting back and forth between him and her colleagues. He couldn't understand why. Maybe it was just nerves, he thought. After all, flying could make anyone a little on edge. But then, about 10 minutes into boarding, the situation took a sharp turn. The flight attendant approached him quietly, speaking into her headset. She didn't make eye contact and seemed to hesitate before saying anything. The man, still not thinking anything of it, looked up with a friendly smile. He expected her to say something simple like, "Can I get you a drink?" or, "Are you all set for the flight?" Instead, her next move caught him completely off guard. She leaned down, spoke to him in a hushed voice, and then turned quickly, walking towards the front of the plane. He didn't think much of it at first. Maybe there was some issue with the flight schedule. He went back to his phone, scrolling through his messages. But just as the plane doors were closing, a heavy hand rested on his shoulder. He looked up to see 2 security officers standing there, their faces unreadable. "Sir, we need you to come with us," one of them said. Confused and startled, he stood up. "What's going on? Is there a problem?" The security officer didn't respond. He simply motioned for the man to follow. As he walked down the aisle, heads turned. The passengers in their seats stared at him, some with raised eyebrows, others whispering amongst themselves. He couldn't help but feel the weight of their gaze. Was it because of the way he was dressed? Maybe he looked too casual, but he had seen plenty of others dressed the same way on flights. Was there something else at play? By the time he reached the gate, the flight attendant was standing there speaking to the head of the security team. She looked nervous, almost apologetic, but she didn't offer any explanation. The man felt his heart race. "Is this some kind of mistake?" he asked again. But the more he spoke, the more the situation felt surreal, as if he were caught in a scene from some movie he didn't belong in. Minutes later, the security officers escorted him off the plane. As he stepped out into the terminal, his phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a text from a colleague back at the company, just a routine work message. But this time, there was something different about the text. The words, "I've just been promoted to CEO," came up on his screen. His fingers trembled slightly as he reread it. He shook his head, confused by the coincidence. He was supposed to be just another passenger today, but somehow, everything felt wrong. Little did anyone know the man who had just been removed from the flight wasn't just any traveler. He wasn't some random businessman or a guy with a bad travel day. No, he was someone with power, a position that no one on that plane could have guessed. And what happened next would change everything. As he stood there, still processing what had just happened, the confusion began to clear. He stepped away from the security officers, trying to steady his thoughts. His heart was still racing, but now it wasn't from fear. It was from something else, something bigger. His mind raced through all the possible reasons why he had been removed from the plane, but nothing made sense. He glanced back toward the gate where the flight attendants were still whispering to each other, their heads down, clearly unaware of what was really going on. They didn't recognize him. They didn't know who he was. He could have said something. He could have demanded answers, raised his voice, and let them know who he really was. But instead, he took a deep breath and let the moment pass. He wasn't just another man on a flight. He was Jamal Wright. And today his life was about to change forever. Minutes after being escorted off the plane, Jamal did something few people would have expected. He didn't reach for his phone to call his family or friends. Instead, he pulled out a sleek black phone from his jacket pocket and dialed a number. It wasn't a personal contact. It was the number that would change everything. "Hello?" A voice answered on the other end. It was calm, yet powerful, the voice of the CEO of the airline. "Hey, it's Jamal," Jamal said, his voice steady. He didn't need to explain further. The CEO knew who he was. There was no confusion on the other end of the line. "I'm at the airport. I need you to get me in the office in 10 minutes. There was a long pause before the CEO responded, but Jamal could sense the recognition in the voice. "Got it. I'll have everything arranged," came the reply. No one could have predicted that a moment of sheer embarrassment, being escorted off a plane by security, would lead to the moment when Jamal Wright, the man who had just been removed from the flight, would walk back into the very same airport, but this time with a new role. A role no one could have imagined. Jamal was about to make a statement, and nothing, not even a flight attendant's mistake, would stop him. It was no longer about a plane ride. It was about taking control of his future and proving a point that would forever change the course of his career. As Jamal walked away from the security officers, a strange calmness washed over him. The initial shock of the situation was wearing off, replaced by a growing sense of clarity. His mind was clear now, and for the first time in a while, he felt the weight of something much larger than the moment itself. He wasn't just a passenger on that flight. He wasn't even just an executive in the company. Jamal had spent years working his way up through the ranks, facing obstacles, overcoming doubts and proving himself. But now, it seemed, fate had placed him in a position where everything would change. He made his way towards the terminal's exit, all the while keeping his phone in his hand. As he walked past the gates, he noticed the passengers staring at him, some with curiosity, others with confusion. Jamal didn't flinch. He knew the eyes of the world, or at least the eyes of those who'd witnessed the strange scene moments ago, were on him. But he didn't care. He had learned long ago that perception could be controlled, and today he was about to show just how easily it could shift. Outside, Jamal saw the car waiting for him. The driver, a middle-aged man who had worked with him for years, didn't ask questions. He simply opened the door, and Jamal got in. The engine roared to life, and the car pulled away from the curb. In the back seat, Jamal leaned back, still holding his phone, but now staring at the incoming texts. They were from the board members. They'd all heard what had happened, and the message was clear. This was the moment. It was time. Jamal had been carefully preparing for this moment for months. The airline was struggling. Leadership had been unstable, and the company was in need of a strong, forward-thinking figure to turn things around. Jamal was that figure, the new CEO. But no one knew it yet. As the car sped towards the office, Jamal's thoughts wandered to the recent months. He had been on the fast track to leadership, but not many were aware of how close he was to the top. The board had been under pressure to find someone who could navigate the challenges ahead, someone who understood the intricacies of both the company and its culture. Jamal had proven himself in meetings, behind closed doors, in quiet conversations with key players in the industry. But today, it would all be public. The past few minutes had been a blur. Being escorted off the plane, the confused looks from the staff, the security officers not knowing who he was, the misunderstanding. It had all been part of the plan. If they hadn't mistaken him for just another passenger, the board would never have gotten the clear signal they needed. And now, the opportunity was in his hands. His phone buzzed again. The CEO's assistant had confirmed that everything was in place. The press release was ready. Within hours, Jamal Wright would be the official face of the airline. His first order of business: to take control of the narrative, to make sure that what had just happened on that plane would not only make headlines, but redefine the company's future. By the time the car arrived at the office, Jamal was ready. He knew that everything would happen fast now, and he had no intention of letting this moment slip away. He stepped out of the car, straightened his jacket, and walked into the building. What started as a simple misunderstanding, a moment of injustice, had become the turning point of his life, and the beginning of something much bigger than he could have ever imagined. As Jamal stepped into the sleek glass building, he could feel the eyes of the employees watching him. Most of them didn't know who he was yet, but they would soon find out. The lobby was bustling with activity, the usual hum of phone calls and hurried footsteps. Jamal walked past the reception desk, where a few staff members glanced up, their faces filled with polite curiosity. No one stopped him or questioned his presence. He didn't expect them to. Today, he wasn't just another visitor. He was about to make his mark. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding, and Jamal stepped inside. As the doors closed behind him, he stared at his reflection in the mirror. His jaw tightened, and his fingers gripped the phone in his hand. It wasn't just the flight attendant's mistake that had led him here. This was about everything he had worked for, everything he had earned. The confusion, the uncertainty, the whispers on the plane. They all seemed trivial now. He had bigger plans. When the elevator doors slid open on the top floor, Jamal was greeted by a group of board members standing in the hallway. They were a mix of ages and backgrounds, some more seasoned, others newer to the company. But one thing was clear. They all understood the importance of what was happening. "Mr. Wright," one of the senior board members said, extending a hand. His voice was firm but respectful. "We've been expecting you." Jamal shook his hand with a calm confidence, then turned to face the group. "Thank you," he said simply. "Let's get to work." The room was filled with a quiet tension. This wasn't a typical board meeting, and everyone in the room knew it. Papers were scattered across the table, and laptops were open, ready for whatever came next. The new CEO wasn't just walking in as a figurehead. He was here to take charge. "Jamal," the chairman spoke, his tone serious, "we've already discussed this in detail. You've proven yourself time and time again. The board believes you're the right person to lead this company through the challenges ahead." Jamal nodded. He had always believed in himself, but hearing those words from the board was validation that the years of hard work and determination had paid off. He wasn't here by accident. He wasn't here because of a fluke. He was here because he deserved it. But there was more, much more. Jamal knew that the airline was in a precarious position. The company had been struggling with internal issues, outdated systems, and a lack of direction. There were whispers in the industry about a possible merger, some even suggesting that the airline might be bought out. That couldn't happen, not on his watch. He took a deep breath and faced the board members. "We're going to change the direction of this company. No more business as usual. It's time to take risks and lead the industry. I'm not here to manage what's left of the company. I'm here to build it into something stronger, more innovative, and more inclusive than it's ever been." The board members exchanged glances. They were impressed, but they also understood the weight of his words. Jamal wasn't just taking the job for the title. He wasn't here for the prestige. He had something bigger in mind, transforming the entire company. The chairman spoke up again, this time with a slight smile. "You've got our full support, Jamal. Just make sure the press release is ready. We'll be making this official within the hour." Jamal gave a small nod, his mind already racing with plans. He had waited for this moment for years, and now it was time to step into the role fully. But as he walked toward the window, looking out over the city skyline, one thought crossed his mind. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about making a difference, about changing the way things were done and proving that a single moment, even one that started as a mistake, could shift the course of an entire industry. "Let's make history," Jamal said, his voice steady but determined. And with that, the meeting began. The meeting that followed was swift and efficient. There was no room for hesitation. Jamal wasted no time, laying out his vision for the airline's future. As he spoke, the board members listened intently, hanging on every word. His plan was ambitious, perhaps even risky. But Jamal had always believed that great companies were built on bold decisions. First things first, he began, his tone unwavering. We need a complete overhaul of our customer service. Our passengers are dissatisfied, and it's clear that we've been falling short. We've got to prioritize their experience. And that starts with listening to them, understanding their needs, and improving our service from the ground up. He paused for a moment, letting his words sink in. The board members nodded in agreement. This wasn't new information. They knew the airline had been struggling to keep up with its competitors. But Jamal was offering more than just surface-level solutions. He was offering a roadmap to real, lasting change. And secondly, Jamal continued, we need to revamp our leadership culture. Too many voices have been silenced in this company. We need to empower our employees at every level, from the front lines to the back office. Everyone should feel like they're part of something bigger, something they can be proud of. If we can build a culture of trust and transparency, we'll have the foundation for a company that not only survives, but thrives. The board members exchanged looks of approval. Jamal was pushing for change in areas they had all known needed attention, but his approach was different. It wasn't just about numbers or quarterly profits. It was about creating a culture that would sustain the company long into the future. And finally, Jamal said, his voice steady, we need to diversify. Our leadership team needs to reflect the world we live in. We need more voices, more perspectives, and more innovation. Diversity isn't just a box to check. It's the key to unlocking new ideas and solving problems we haven't even begun to think about. There was a brief silence in the room. Jamal had hit a nerve. While the company had made strides in some areas, diversity at the leadership level had always been a sensitive topic. Many of the board members knew this was something that had to change, but no one had dared to speak about it so directly. Jamal was different. These changes won't happen overnight, Jamal added, his eyes scanning the room. But they'll start today, and I'm going to be the one driving them. This isn't just about being the CEO. It's about leading with purpose. The air in the room felt charged, electric even. Jamal wasn't just talking about business strategy or industry trends. He was talking about transformation, a complete shift in how the company operated and saw itself. It was a bold vision, and the board was starting to see that Jamal wasn't just the right person for the job. He was the only person who could take the airline where it needed to go. One of the younger board members, a woman who had been quietly observing, spoke up. Jamal, you're talking about a total reset. Are you sure the company's ready for this level of change? We've been stuck in our ways for a long time. It won't be easy. Jamal smiled, his confidence unwavering. I'm not here to make things easy, he replied. I'm here to make things better. If we don't take risks now, we'll just continue to stagnate. I'm ready for the challenge, and I need you all to be ready too. The room fell into a contemplative silence as his words lingered. They knew Jamal wasn't just talking about restructuring an airline. He was talking about reshaping an entire culture. A culture that had been stuck in tradition, in complacency, and in outdated methods. But now, with Jamal at the helm, things were about to change. The board members didn't need convincing anymore. They could feel it in their bones. This was a turning point, a moment they would look back on and know they had been a part of something big. Jamal's vision wasn't just a blueprint for success, it was a blueprint for revolution. All right, the chairman said, finally breaking the silence. We'll back you, Jamal. Let's move forward. You've got our full support. Jamal nodded, standing up with a newfound sense of purpose. Thank you. Let's make it happen. As the meeting came to a close, Jamal felt the weight of the decision he had just made. This wasn't just about him becoming CEO. This was about leading the airline into a new era. An era where leadership, inclusivity, and bold decisions would define the company's future. And it all began with a mistake. A simple misunderstanding on a plane, where a flight attendant had wrongly assumed who he was. But in the end, it was that very mistake that had opened the door to this incredible opportunity. Jamal was ready. The real work was just beginning. The days that followed felt like a blur to Jamal. The press release went out within the hour, and before he knew it, his name was splashed across news outlets and social media platforms. New CEO of Airline name takes over after dramatic incident, the headlines read, each with a different spin on the same story. Some focused on the flight incident itself, how a flight attendant had mistakenly called security on him, while others emphasized his immediate rise to the top, making him one of the first black CEOs in the airline industry. It was everywhere, and for the first time in his life, Jamal was at the center of a storm he had never expected. But Jamal knew this wasn't about the headlines. It was about what he could do with this moment. The world was watching, and he had no intention of letting them down. The real challenge began now. That first week as CEO was a whirlwind. Jamal didn't waste any time making his mark. He immediately called for a series of meetings with senior leadership and department heads. The airline had been through a rough patch, with declining customer satisfaction, internal tensions, and a lack of clear vision. There was a long road ahead, but Jamal was determined to fix it, and fast. He started with the customer service department. It was the heart of the airline. Every passenger interaction, every flight attendant's greeting, every issue brought up by travelers was a chance to either make or break the company's reputation. But the airline's service had become robotic, impersonal, and at times downright frustrating for passengers. Jamal knew this was where change had to start. He spent hours meeting with customer service managers, listening to frontline employees, and reviewing customer feedback. What he found was shocking, but not entirely surprising. Staff members felt undervalued, often ignored by upper management. They were stretched thin, forced to deal with complaints and issues without the support they needed. The airline had treated customer service as an afterthought rather than a priority. "We're going to change that," Jamal declared in one of his early meetings. "You are the backbone of this company, and we are going to start treating you that way." He wasn't just making a statement, he was setting the tone for how the rest of his leadership would unfold. His focus wasn't just on fixing the airline's problems, it was on empowering the people who would help solve them. Jamal knew that the employees who interacted with passengers every day were the real experts in understanding what needed to change. They had the insight, the knowledge, and the connection to the customer that no board meeting could replicate. But as much as Jamal wanted to make an immediate impact, he knew there was one more challenge ahead. The company had always been known for its conservative, traditional ways of doing business. There was an unspoken rule about how things should be done, and many of the executives in the room were reluctant to break those norms. This was where Jamal's experience and years of quiet leadership came into play. He had always been a disruptor, someone who had learned how to challenge the status quo without stepping on too many toes. He needed to make sure that the vision he was laying out wouldn't be dismissed as just another CEO talk. That evening, after back-to-back meetings, Jamal found himself alone in his office. The windows overlooked the city, and for a moment, he allowed himself to reflect on everything that had happened. He thought about that moment on the plane, the confusion, the misunderstanding, and how it had led him here. It was almost surreal. In a matter of days, he had gone from being an unnoticed executive to the face of the company, to a symbol of change and progress. It was overwhelming, yet exhilarating. Jamal picked up the phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. The line rang twice before someone picked up. "Hey, it's Jamal," he said, his voice more relaxed than it had been all day. "I need to talk through something. I've got a plan, but I need to make sure we're all aligned." It was his mentor, someone who had guided him throughout his career and had always been a sounding board for his ideas. They spoke for almost an hour, hashing out details of his vision, discussing the complexities of leading a company through such a massive shift. His mentor's advice was always practical, grounded in real-world experience, and it helped Jamal refocus. "You've got this, Jamal," his mentor said before hanging up. "You were always meant for this. But remember, change isn't just about big moves and big speeches. It's about the small wins, the ones that happen when you least expect them. Stay patient. Stay grounded." Those words stuck with Jamal as he prepared for the next phase of his leadership. He knew there would be challenges ahead, There were always challenges, but now he had the support he needed, not just from his colleagues but from the people who mattered most, the employees who worked every day to keep the airline running, and the customers who kept flying with them. The next morning, Jamal addressed the entire company via a live broadcast. This was his first direct communication with all the employees, and he knew it had to be more than just a speech. It had to be a call to action. As the camera focused on him, he took a deep breath and looked into the lens, ready to share his vision with the team that would help bring it to life. "I'm not here to just steer the ship," Jamal began, his voice strong. "I'm here to change the direction. Together, we're going to build something that not only competes in the industry but leads it. We're going to create an airline that values its employees, listens to its customers, and most importantly, is proud of what it represents." The words felt right. The company was ready for change, and so was Jamal. As he wrapped up the broadcast, he could already feel the shift. It was happening, slowly but surely. The airline wasn't just going to survive, it was going to thrive, and Jamal Wright was going to be the one to lead it there. And every step of the way he would remember how it all began, with a mistake, a misunderstanding, and a single decision that would forever alter his life. As the weeks passed, Jamal settled into his role as CEO with a level of determination that was unmistakable. The flurry of media attention eventually died down, and though the press continued to cover his story, Jamal's focus remained squarely on the work ahead. The initial wave of excitement had been necessary. It had brought visibility to the airline, and it had allowed him to step into the role with a clear mandate. But now it was time for substance. Time to turn the attention into action. The company's corporate culture was the first obstacle Jamal had to tackle. For years, employees had grown accustomed to the status quo, rigid hierarchies, slow decision-making, and a general sense that things were done the same way simply because they had always been done that way. The airline had become a well-oiled machine, but it was a machine that had grown outdated. The corporate world had changed, and the expectations of employees, customers, and even investors had evolved. Jamal knew that the company's ability to adapt, to innovate, was the key to survival. He made it clear from the very beginning that things would be different under his leadership. He was no longer going to sit in high-level meetings, away from the pulse of the company. He would be visible, accessible, and most importantly, he would listen. He spent time walking through the offices, sitting with employees in break rooms and talking to flight attendants between flights. Jamal didn't want to just sit behind a desk and issue orders. He wanted to hear directly from the people who made the airline what it was. One of the first changes Jamal implemented was the launch of a new initiative called Voice of the Crew. It was a platform where employees at every level could share their ideas, concerns, and feedback directly with upper management. Jamal didn't want just the executives making decisions in boardrooms. He wanted the people on the front lines to have a say in shaping the company's future. "We all have a stake in this," Jamal told the company during one of his internal town hall meetings. "You don't have to sit in a corner office to make a difference. If you have an idea that can make us better, I want to hear it. If you see a problem, let's fix it together." At first, some employees were skeptical. They had heard similar promises from previous leaders, only to see them fall short. But Jamal's consistent presence and transparency gradually won them over. His actions matched his words. For the first time in years, employees felt they were part of something bigger. They weren't just cogs in a machine. They were part of a movement. But Jamal knew that culture alone wouldn't turn the airline around. To truly make an impact, the company had to become more agile, more competitive, and more innovative. He turned his attention to the airline's technology infrastructure. The systems that had been in place for years were outdated and cumbersome, leading to delays, errors, and inefficiencies. Jamal couldn't afford to let the airline continue on this path. He hired a new chief technology officer, someone with a bold vision for modernizing the airline's entire digital ecosystem. The first step was to overhaul the booking system, which had become notorious for causing frustration among customers. A more user-friendly, streamlined system was needed, one that could make the travel experience smoother from booking to boarding. Jamal also understood the importance of connecting with the younger generation of travelers. They were the future of the airline industry. He pushed for a major overhaul of the company's mobile app, making it more intuitive, faster, and packed with features that customers actually wanted. Features like real-time flight tracking, easier check-ins, and personalized travel recommendations. This wasn't just about improving convenience. It was about building loyalty with the next generation of flyers who would choose an airline based on their experience, not just price. Behind the scenes, Jamal began working on the company's partnerships. He recognized that to stay competitive, the airline had to build stronger alliances with other companies, both within the travel industry and beyond. Reached out to hotel chains, rental car agencies, and even tech firms to explore new partnership opportunities that would create a more seamless travel experience for customers. His goal was to make the airline not just a carrier, but a one-stop travel solution. A brand that customers could trust not only to get them to their destination, but to help them plan and enjoy their entire journey. The board, which had been cautiously optimistic about Jamal's ability to execute his vision, began to take notice. His ideas were starting to take root, and the early signs were promising. Customer satisfaction scores began to rise, employee morale was improving, and the company was gaining more traction in the industry. It wasn't just about the big headlines anymore. It was about the quiet, steady progress that was happening every day. Jamal wasn't a leader who demanded respect. He earned it. But just as things seemed to be moving in the right direction, Jamal faced another challenge. A new competitor had emerged in the airline industry, a low-cost carrier that was making waves with its aggressive pricing and streamlined operations. This competitor was gaining market share quickly, and Jamal knew that if the airline didn't act fast, they could lose even more ground. Jamal called an emergency meeting with his executive team. He had spent hours reviewing the competitor's business model, analyzing their strengths and weaknesses. The airline's team was nervous. They had been used to a certain level of stability, but now they were facing real competition. "We have to get creative," Jamal told them, his voice steady but firm. "We can't fight them on price alone. We need to focus on what makes us different, our customer experience, our brand, and the relationships we've built over the years. We need to double down on those areas where we have the advantage and make sure our customers know they're getting more than just a seat on a plane." The solution wasn't simple, but Jamal's vision was clear. The airline had to be about more than just getting from point A to point B. They had to provide a value proposition that customers couldn't get anywhere else. This meant investing in their premium services, improving the in-flight experience, and making loyalty programs more rewarding for frequent travelers. Jamal also recognized that technology would be key in the fight, so he pushed forward with plans to launch an innovative new reward system that would integrate with the mobile app and allow customers to earn points in new and exciting ways. It was a risky move, but Jamal was used to taking risks. He had learned early on that the greatest victories often came from the boldest decisions. Now, as he sat at the head of the company, watching his vision unfold, he couldn't help but think back to that moment on the plane. It had been the catalyst for everything that had happened, but it was only the beginning. There was still so much more to do, so many more battles to fight. The airline was on the right path, but the road ahead would not be easy, and Jamal was ready. The months that followed were filled with intense decision-making, constant refinement of strategies, and an unyielding push toward Jamal's vision of transforming the airline. Despite the excitement of the early changes, Jamal knew the hard work had only just begun. There were skeptics, both within the company and outside, who doubted whether the changes he'd promised would truly take hold. The media continued to cover his leadership, but now the scrutiny felt sharper. Every move he made, every decision he took was being analyzed with a magnifying glass. Yet, Jamal was not deterred. He had set the course, and now it was time to execute. One of the most immediate challenges was dealing with the growing rivalry with the low-cost competitor that had emerged. Their price cuts were attracting new customers, particularly younger, price-sensitive travelers. But Jamal knew that the airline couldn't compete on price alone, not when their operational costs were higher and their service offerings were designed for a different market. Jamal's strategy had always been about differentiating the airline through superior service, a unique travel experience, and building long-term loyalty. This was about creating value, not just selling tickets. He spent countless hours meeting with department heads, reviewing data, and examining the key areas where the airline could make improvements. One area that he identified as a major opportunity was the airline's frequent flyer program. It was outdated, with complicated reward structures and limited benefits that often left loyal customers feeling unappreciated. Jamal knew the program needed a complete overhaul to meet the expectations of modern travelers who wanted convenience, flexibility, and most importantly, recognition for their loyalty. Jamal brought in a new team of experts to redesign the loyalty program from the ground up. They worked tirelessly to craft a system that rewarded not just frequent flyers, but also those who engaged with the airline in other ways, whether through social media, customer feedback, or by opting into additional services like premium lounges or extra baggage. The idea was simple: create a rewards program that felt personalized, where each customer was treated as an individual, not just a number in the system. It took months to get it right, but when the new program was finally launched, it was met with overwhelming praise. The revamped loyalty program was a game changer. It resonated with the airline's most dedicated customers, many of whom had been loyal for years, but felt the program was no longer keeping up with their needs. More than just earning points for flights, customers could now enjoy personalized offers, upgrades, and experiences that matched their unique preferences. This was something the competition couldn't offer, and it was a crucial step in positioning the airline as a brand that went above and beyond just getting passengers from one place to another. But it wasn't just about the loyalty program. Jamal knew that the entire passenger experience had to be elevated to match the new offerings. His team launched a major initiative to revamp the in-flight service, focusing on comfort, entertainment, and personalized customer care. Every element of the experience was scrutinized: the seating, the meals, the entertainment options, and even the way flight attendants interacted with passengers. Jamal wanted the airline to be known for delivering the most comfortable, enjoyable flight possible, and that meant investing heavily in training, equipment, and technology to ensure that each passenger felt valued from the moment they stepped onto the plane. One of Jamal's most important moves was to introduce customer experience managers on each flight. These specially trained crew members were dedicated to providing a superior service experience. Their job wasn't just about answering questions or handling complaints. They were there to ensure that each passenger's journey was as pleasant as possible. Whether that meant accommodating special requests, helping with last-minute changes, or just checking in with travelers to make sure they were comfortable, the customer experience managers were there to go the extra mile. This new role became a hit with customers, who appreciated the personalized touch. Meanwhile, the airline's reputation was slowly but surely changing. Word of mouth spread and passengers began to notice the difference. The feedback from social media, online reviews, and customer surveys was overwhelmingly positive. The airline was no longer just an option for people looking for a cheap flight. It had become a preferred choice for travelers who wanted a more comfortable, rewarding experience. But Jamal wasn't ready to rest just yet. The low-cost carrier was still growing, and their market share was increasing. Jamal knew that while customer experience was key, the airline still had to find ways to cut costs without sacrificing the quality of service. So, he began looking for innovative ways to streamline operations. He worked closely with the operations team to identify inefficiencies, from fuel management to maintenance procedures, and found ways to reduce waste and improve turnaround times at airports. One of the most significant changes came in the form of fleet modernization. The airline's planes were aging, and while they were reliable, They were also expensive to maintain, and not as fuel efficient as newer models. Jamal pushed for a long-term investment plan to replace older aircraft with more fuel-efficient, environmentally friendly models. This move wasn't just about cost savings, it was also about signaling to the public that the airline was serious about sustainability. The new fleet was quieter, more energy efficient, and better equipped to handle the demands of modern air travel. Despite these efforts, Jamal was aware that the road ahead wasn't without its challenges. The airline industry was volatile, and external factors like rising fuel prices, changes in international travel regulations, and the unpredictable nature of global events could throw even the most well-laid plans off course. Jamal had learned to stay adaptable, to make decisions with the understanding that things could change in an instant. He knew that the key to long-term success wasn't just in making the right moves today, but in preparing the company to adapt and thrive in the face of whatever came next. One evening, as Jamal sat in his office, staring out at the city skyline, he reflected on how far the airline had come since that fateful day on the plane. It felt like a lifetime ago. Back then, he had been an unknown passenger, mistreated and misunderstood, with no idea that his life was about to change forever. Now, he was the CEO of one of the most talked-about airlines in the industry, a company that was rising from the ashes and reinventing what it meant to be a leader in the field. Jamal knew there was still much more to be done. But as he reviewed the latest customer satisfaction reports and watched the numbers climb, he felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The company was thriving, but more than that, it was becoming something he had always dreamed of. A company that valued its employees, its customers, and its future. A company that, just like him, was never afraid to start over, take risks, and turn mistakes into opportunities. The road ahead was long, but Jamal was ready for whatever came next. He had started at the bottom, faced rejection, and been misunderstood. But now he had built something real. And with each decision he made, each change he implemented, Jamal knew that he wasn't just running an airline. He was shaping its legacy. As the airline's transformation gained momentum, Jamal's leadership began to attract attention, not just within the industry, but across the business world. His ability to balance innovation with a deep respect for tradition was seen as a rare skill, one that many thought was missing in today's fast-paced, often unpredictable corporate landscape, where many leaders had resorted to drastic cuts, layoffs, and impersonal corporate speak. Jamal was building something different. A company that treated people as its most valuable asset, and customers as partners in the journey. But success, Jamal had learned, brought its own set of challenges. His every move was being watched more closely now, not just by the media, but by competitors, stakeholders, and even his own board. Everyone wanted to know if his early successes were just flukes, or if he could sustain the momentum. Could the airline's revival last beyond the initial excitement? Was Jamal's leadership truly a lasting change, or would the old habits creep back in? Jamal knew that he could never take his foot off the gas. The low-cost carrier that had once seemed like a minor threat was now making substantial inroads into markets the airline had long dominated. Their success wasn't just about their aggressive pricing model. It was about how they had streamlined every aspect of their operation. They were ruthlessly efficient, which made Jamal realize that the airline, while improving, still had room to optimize its internal processes. Efficiency, he knew, would be just as crucial to long-term success as customer service. With this in mind, Jamal decided to make another bold move. He initiated a company-wide digital transformation. The idea was to integrate cutting-edge technology into every aspect of the airline's operations, from ticketing and customer support to flight scheduling and maintenance. Jamal wasn't just talking about improving the airline's app or website. He wanted to overhaul the way the company operated on a fundamental level. The goal was to streamline processes, reduce overhead costs, and increase the speed at which they could respond to customer needs. One of the first initiatives was to launch a predictive maintenance program. The idea was simple. Using sensors and data analytics, the airline could monitor the condition of its aircraft in real time, predicting when parts were likely to fail or need maintenance. This not only minimized the risk of unscheduled downtime, but also cut costs associated with emergency repairs. For Jamal, this was an essential part of his broader strategy to turn the airline into a data-driven organization. By integrating data into every decision, he believed the company could move from a reactive approach to a proactive one. Simultaneously, Jamal pushed for the development of a more advanced customer service system. While the airline's new loyalty program was well received, he knew that true customer experience meant anticipating problems before they occurred. He envisioned a system where flight attendants could access real-time data on passenger preferences, making each interaction more personalized. If a frequent traveler had a preferred seat or meal, that information should be readily available to ensure their experience was seamless and enjoyable. Similarly, if a passenger's flight was delayed, the system would automatically offer alternatives, including hotel accommodations or transportation vouchers, with no need for them to ask. Jamal wanted his airline to be the first to provide such an elevated service using technology, not to replace the human element, but to enhance it. The digital overhaul wasn't just about back-end operations. Jamal also set his sights on the customer-facing side of the business. While the airline's mobile app had been updated, it still didn't offer the kind of interactive, intuitive experience that he envisioned. He tasked his tech team with developing a new version of the app, one that not only allowed users to book flights and check in, but provided personalized experiences based on their travel history and preferences. A business traveler might see an option for priority boarding, while a family might receive a prompt about kid-friendly amenities or discounts on family meals. Every traveler would feel as if the app understood their needs. This digital push didn't just affect technology. It led to a complete cultural shift within the company. Employees who had once been resistant to change were now embracing it. Jamal made sure to emphasize that technology wasn't here to replace people, but to empower them. "We're not automating jobs," he said repeatedly in town halls. "We're giving our people the tools they need to do their jobs better, faster, and with more impact." To further cement the importance of this shift, Jamal hired a chief innovation officer, someone whose job was to ensure that technology and innovation were seamlessly integrated into the company's DNA. The new hire's first order of business was to set up innovation labs in every major department. These labs would focus on identifying and implementing new ideas, whether they were technological innovations or new ways of serving customers. The goal was to create an environment where employees felt encouraged to experiment, fail, and learn, without the fear of making mistakes. The new approach started to pay off faster than Jamal had anticipated. Operational costs began to decrease as predictive maintenance reduced unplanned aircraft downtime. The efficiency of the airline systems meant that delays were less frequent, and when they did occur, the airline was better equipped to handle the situation. Customer satisfaction scores, which had been steadily improving, surged to record levels thanks to the personalized service and quick resolution of issues. And the newly upgraded loyalty program was already showing positive results, with many customers expressing a renewed sense of appreciation for the brand. However, the most telling sign that Jamal's plan was working came during the company's quarterly financial review. For the first time in years, the airline reported a significant increase in profits, not just due to cost cuts, but also because customers were choosing to fly with them more often. The airline had regained a portion of the market share it had lost to the low-cost competitor, and most importantly, it was attracting a more diverse customer base. People weren't just choosing the airline for its competitive pricing, but because they valued the experience it provided. Jamal knew this was just the beginning, and he couldn't afford to become complacent. The airline industry was always evolving and the competition wasn't standing still. But as he sat in his office late one evening, watching the sunset over the city, he allowed himself a moment to reflect. It had been less than a year since he had taken the reins of the company, and already, things had changed beyond recognition. The journey wasn't easy, and Jamal had faced challenges at every turn. But as he looked at the airline's soaring stock prices, growing customer loyalty, and increasing employee satisfaction, He felt a deep sense of pride. He had come a long way from the man who had been escorted off a plane by security, a man who had been underestimated and misunderstood. Now he was a leader who had proven not only his own potential, but had helped an entire company rediscover its greatness. Jamal had always believed in the power of transformation, not just in companies but in people. His own journey was a testament to that belief. And as the airline continued to rise, so too would the legacy he was building, brick by brick, flight by flight. He wasn't just changing the face of one airline, he was changing the way an entire industry would think about leadership, customer service, and innovation for years to come. The best part? He wasn't done yet. There were still more flights to take, more challenges to face, and more records to break. And Jamal was ready for all of it. The airline's recovery and rapid growth under Jamal's leadership didn't go unnoticed in the industry. Business analysts, reporters, and even former critics were starting to take note of the extraordinary transformation happening at the airline. Some described it as a comeback story for the ages. Others marveled at how Jamal had turned a ship that seemed to be sinking into one of the most successful brands in the industry. But for Jamal, the external praise was only part of the picture. He had built something far more important, a company that was now thriving not just in numbers, but in culture. One of Jamal's most significant accomplishments in this journey was his ability to foster a sense of unity and purpose among his employees. The airline had long struggled with a disjointed workforce, where employees at various levels felt disconnected from the company's goals. But Jamal's leadership style, grounded in transparency and respect for the people who made the airline run, created an environment where everyone felt empowered. To maintain this momentum, Jamal implemented a system of quarterly all-hands meetings where every employee, from the baggage handlers to the executives, could hear directly from him about the company's progress, challenges, and vision for the future. These meetings became a platform for not just Jamal to communicate with his team, but for employees to voice their thoughts, concerns, and ideas. For the first time in years, the airline felt like a true community, a place where every role was valued, no matter how big or small. The culture shift within the company was palpable. Flight attendants and gate agents spoke openly about how they felt more supported and valued by the company than they had in years. Customer service representatives no longer felt like they were working in silos, dealing with angry customers alone. They were now part of a larger strategy, and their efforts were being recognized. Jamal's belief that happy employees lead to happy customers had become the backbone of the company's strategy, and it was working. But as much as Jamal wanted to celebrate the improvements, he knew the journey wasn't over. The airline's success wasn't guaranteed. The competition was fierce, and the industry was ever-changing. More than once, he found himself staying up late, reviewing reports and thinking ahead to what the future would hold. He understood that the key to staying on top wasn't just about sustaining growth, but about continuing to innovate, adapt, and lead. One area that had been steadily growing in importance for the airline was sustainability. The conversation around the environmental impact of air travel had reached a tipping point. Pressure was mounting from regulatory bodies, customers, and even the airline's own employees to do more to reduce its carbon footprint. Jamal knew that this wasn't just a passing trend. It was a critical issue that needed to be addressed. As part of his ongoing strategy to modernize the company, he pushed for the development of a comprehensive sustainability plan. Jamal's vision was clear. By 2030, the airline would become one of the most eco-friendly carriers in the world. He set ambitious targets, including reducing carbon emissions per mile flown by 25%, increasing the fleet's fuel efficiency, and investing in more sustainable aviation fuel options. He also introduced a customer carbon offset program, allowing passengers to contribute to carbon reduction projects when booking their flights. These initiatives weren't just good for the environment, they were good for the airline's brand too. Travelers increasingly wanted to support businesses that aligned with their values, and Jamal saw sustainability as an opportunity to further differentiate the airline from its competitors. The challenge, of course, was implementing these ambitious goals in an industry known for its high environmental costs. Jamal knew that these changes wouldn't come without significant investments, both in new technology and in overhauling long-standing operational practices. Yet, he also understood that long-term sustainability wasn't just about reducing emissions. It was about future-proofing the company in an increasingly eco-conscious world. Jamal met with the airline's board to discuss the plan, which was met with cautious optimism. The financial investment would be large, but the payoff was clear. A more sustainable airline would attract eco-conscious travelers, align with the growing regulatory demands, and ultimately create operational efficiencies that could lower costs in the long run. Jamal wasn't asking the board for permission to simply dip a toe into sustainability. He was asking them to fully embrace it as a core part of the company's future. His proposal was approved, and work began immediately on implementing a comprehensive sustainability strategy. The airline would begin by investing in next-generation fuel-efficient aircraft, retrofitting older planes with more efficient engines, and creating new operational procedures designed to reduce waste and energy consumption. Jamal was committed to leading by example, ensuring that sustainability wasn't just a buzzword, but a reality woven into the fabric of the company's operations. As the airline moved forward with these changes, Jamal couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. He had taken the helm of a company on the brink of collapse, and through vision, determination, and the collective effort of his team, he had turned it around. But now, he was facing a new challenge, one that wasn't just about financial performance or customer satisfaction. It was about ensuring the long-term viability of the company, not just in the face of competition, but in a world that was rapidly changing. The road ahead was filled with unknowns. The world was shifting, both economically and environmentally, and the airline industry would need to adapt to survive. But Jamal was ready for the challenge. He had proven that he could turn a company around. Now, it was time to ensure that the airline not only thrived in the present, but also set the standard for what the future of air travel could look like. As the airline moved forward into this new chapter, Jamal's leadership continued to evolve. He had already achieved more in his first 2 years than most CEOs could dream of, but his relentless drive to push the company toward greater success never wavered. There was no room for complacency, not when so much had been accomplished and so much more needed to be done. The digital transformation was one of the cornerstones of the airline's resurgence, and now it was becoming clear that the airline was emerging as an industry leader in technological innovation. Jamal continued to push for new and creative ways to integrate technology into the customer experience. The airline's mobile app had evolved into one of the most sophisticated in the industry, offering customers not just flight bookings and check-ins, but a range of personalized services, from in-flight entertainment options to real-time assistance via chatbots. With the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning, the app was able to predict customers' needs and offer tailored services before they even asked. For Jamal, technology wasn't just a tool for efficiency, it was a way to build stronger relationships with customers. He viewed every technological innovation as an opportunity to connect with passengers on a deeper level. By utilizing data, the airline could anticipate their needs and preferences, making each interaction feel more personalized and meaningful. This was about more than just convenience. It was about making passengers feel valued and understood. The airline's commitment to customer experience was no longer just a slogan. It had become the backbone of its operations. But Jamal also understood that while technology could improve the customer experience, it could never replace the human element that was so critical in the airline industry. One of his most important decisions was to maintain a balance between automation and personal service. Even as he pushed for more self-service options, such as automated check-ins and digital baggage tracking, Jamal ensured that the airline's employees remained at the heart of the customer experience. The new customer experience managers were a prime example of this balance, combining advanced tools with a genuine human touch to ensure that passengers had the best possible experience. The airline's cultural transformation also continued to gather steam. Jamal's focus on inclusivity, transparency, and employee empowerment had already begun to reshape the way the company operated. More employees at every level were stepping up with ideas, and the leadership team was working more closely with the frontline staff than ever before. This new level of collaboration and mutual respect was paying off in more ways than one. Productivity was up, internal communication had improved, and employee satisfaction scores were consistently high. However, Jamal knew that as the company grew, maintaining this sense of connection and unity would become more difficult. The airline was expanding rapidly, both domestically and internationally, and the number of employees was growing by the day. Jamal realized that it was crucial to establish systems that would continue to foster the same collaborative spirit, no matter how large the organization became. He initiated a series of leadership development programs designed to cultivate the next generation of leaders within the company, ensuring that the values of transparency, empathy, and innovation were embedded in every level of the organization. As Jamal looked out at the rapidly growing company he had helped build, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worthwhile. The airline wasn't just recovering anymore, it was thriving, becoming a beacon of innovation and customer service in an industry that often felt stale and disconnected from the needs of the modern traveler. But even with all the progress, Jamal remained focused on the future. He understood that no matter how much success the company had achieved, the business world was constantly changing, and staying ahead of the curve required constant reinvention. And so, as he looked ahead to the coming years, Jamal knew that the best was yet to come, and he was ready to lead his team into that future, whatever challenges lay ahead. Jamal's leadership journey was no longer just a personal story of redemption or a company turnaround. It had become a case study in the power of resilience, vision, and the relentless pursuit of innovation. The airline was a different company now, a modernized, forward-thinking entity that valued both its employees and customers in ways that many other companies in the industry had failed to. But even with all the successes, Jamal knew that a company could never stand still. There was always more to do, always more to improve, and always more to achieve. The airline's reputation for customer service was now legendary. Passengers were consistently giving high ratings for the experience they had, from check-in to landing. The app that Jamal had pushed for, which once seemed like an afterthought in the airline's strategy, had become a cutting-edge tool that passengers not only used for booking flights, but as an essential part of their travel experience. Every flight felt like a personalized journey, not just from one place to another, but into a community of travelers who valued comfort, convenience, and above all, respect. Jamal had also seen his focus on sustainability start to bear fruit. The company had made significant strides in reducing its carbon footprint, and the introduction of sustainable aviation fuel, SAF, had further solidified the airline's position as an environmental leader. The changes weren't just a public relations move, they were deeply embedded into the company's operations, reducing waste and improving the efficiency of each flight. The efforts were recognized both by regulators and by passengers, who increasingly chose the airline not just for its service, but because it aligned with their values. Sustainability, once an afterthought in the airline industry, was now a core part of the company's identity. But Jamal wasn't satisfied with just being a leader in customer service or sustainability. He wanted to go further, to be an industry leader in every way. He knew that the world of air travel was constantly evolving, and the next big challenge on the horizon wasn't just about customer experience or green initiatives. It was about navigating the future of air travel in the age of automation and artificial intelligence, AI. The airline industry was already starting to see AI's potential in various areas, from predictive maintenance to personalized customer service, and Jamal was committed to ensuring his airline stayed at the forefront of this evolution. He began pushing the company to explore the potential of AI more deeply. The idea was to use AI to improve every aspect of the passenger experience. From chatbots that could answer questions and resolve issues instantly, to AI-driven systems that could predict and prevent flight delays, Jamal believed that the airline could leverage technology to create a seamless, frictionless experience for passengers. Beyond just customer service, AI could be used to optimize flight routes, predict maintenance needs, and even manage fuel usage more effectively, saving both time and money. One of the most ambitious ideas Jamal proposed was the introduction of fully automated check-in and boarding processes using facial recognition technology. Passengers could walk into the airport, scan their face at a kiosk, and have their boarding pass generated immediately. They could then walk straight to their gate, where the same technology would confirm their identity and grant them access to the flight. No lines, no waiting, just a smooth, efficient process that took the stress out of traveling. It was a bold move, but Jamal was confident that, with proper implementation, it could revolutionize the airport experience. However, not everyone in the company was immediately sold on this vision. The idea of automation, especially the level Jamal was envisioning, raised concerns about privacy, security, and the potential loss of jobs. Some employees felt uncertain about what this shift would mean for them. Jamal understood their concerns. He spent hours meeting with employees, explaining the vision, and reassuring them that the goal wasn't to replace people, but to empower them. By automating repetitive tasks, employees could focus on the higher-level, more human aspects of customer service that machines simply couldn't replicate. Jamal also knew that this kind of transformation required not just a technological shift, but a cultural one. The company had always prided itself on its human touch, and Jamal wanted to ensure that no matter how much technology advanced, the heart of the airline, the personal connections between employees and passengers, would always remain at the center of the experience. The changes were slow, incremental, but undeniably impactful. AI-powered systems began optimizing flight schedules, reducing delays, and improving operational efficiency. The airline's loyalty program became even more personalized, thanks to AI's ability to predict traveler behavior and tailor offers to individual customers. And the seamless, automated travel experience began to take shape, with passengers praising the ease and speed of the process. Jamal had set out to make his mark on the airline industry, and it was becoming clear that he had. The airline wasn't just recovering, it was thriving, leading, and setting new standards for the industry. What had once been a company on the brink of collapse was now an industry leader, a company that other airlines looked to for inspiration, and a company that passengers turned to not just for affordable flights, but for an experience that put their needs first. As Jamal sat in his office late one evening, looking over reports and watching the sunset over the city, he couldn't help but think about the incredible journey that had brought him here. He had been the passenger kicked off a flight for no reason. He had been underestimated, misjudged, and overlooked. But he had turned all of that into something powerful, not just for himself, but for an entire company, its employees and its customers. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jamal knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. As the years passed, Jamal's leadership continued to leave an indelible mark on the airline and the broader industry. The company's transformation was no longer just a story of turnaround. It had become a textbook example of how visionary leadership, innovation, and a relentless focus on customer experience could reshape an entire company. Jamal had done more than just save the airline. He had redefined what it meant to be a leader in the airline industry. The company's financial performance continued to soar, with profits reaching record highs year after year. The airline's stock price was now one of the most valuable in the industry, and its customer satisfaction ratings consistently outperformed its competitors. The company had grown into an icon of the airline industry, one that was often cited in business schools as a prime example of corporate reinvention. Jamal had done it. The airline had gone from the brink of failure to becoming a global leader in customer service, sustainability, and technological innovation. But Jamal didn't rest on his laurels. He knew that success in the corporate world was never permanent unless you continued to innovate and adapt. He never forgot the lessons he had learned through his own journey. That change was constant, that adaptability was key, and that success was never guaranteed. So he continued to push the envelope, working on new ideas, new technologies, and new ways of making the airline even better. He understood that leadership wasn't just about getting to the top, it was about staying there and continuing to lead. Looking back, Jamal realized how far he had come since that fateful day when he had been escorted off the plane. That single moment, which had seemed like a tragic misjudgment, had been the catalyst for everything that followed. It had been the wake-up call, the turning point that had ignited a fire within him to prove not just his own worth, but the value of everything he believed in. And in the end, it was that belief, in himself, in his team, and in the power of transformation, that had made all the difference. As Jamal sat in his office overlooking the city once again, he thought about the future. There was still more work to do, more challenges to overcome, and more opportunities to seize. But he felt confident. He knew the company was in the best hands possible. Not just his, but the hands of a dedicated team that had been with him from the beginning. A team that had believed in the vision and helped bring it to life. In the end, Jamal's story wasn't just about a man who had been underestimated and turned that into success. It was about a company that had been given a second chance, a company that had embraced change, innovation, and a commitment to doing things better. And now, as Jamal looked out over the horizon, he knew that the best was yet to come. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories like this. Thanks for watching.